The first thing that felt wrong wasn't the bill. It was the sound. A low, constant hum coming from the side of the house, the kind you don't notice at first because it blends into everything else, until one day, it doesn't. I was standing in the driveway early that morning, coffee in hand, about to leave for work when I heard it clearly for the first time. Not loud, just steady. Too steady. I walked over to the meter box slowly, more out of habit than concern, because I've learned over the years that when something feels off, it usually is. The display was active, numbers rolling faster than they should have been for a house that was barely using anything at that hour. No AC running, no heavy appliances, nothing that justified that kind of draw. I stood there for a second, watching it tick up. Then I opened the panel. That's when I saw it. A secondary line. Not part of the original setup. Not installed by the utility company. It was clean work, I'll give them that, routed neatly, tucked in just enough that someone who wasn't looking for it wouldn't notice. But I was looking, and that line wasn't going into my house. It was going out. I followed it with my eyes first, then stepped around the side of the house, moving slowly along the fence line until I found where it disappeared under the brush, straight toward the back access road, the one the HOA patrol used. I didn't react right away, didn't pull it, didn't call anyone, because this wasn't random. This was deliberate. And if someone had gone through the trouble of wiring into my system like that, they weren't doing it once. They were doing it regularly. I went inside, set my coffee down, and grabbed my phone, pulling up the last few months of utility statements. The numbers lined up, gradual increases, nothing extreme, just enough to avoid attention. Until now. That told me two things. One, this had been going on for a while, and two, whoever was doing it thought no one was paying attention. That was their first mistake. I checked the time, still early, which meant if they had a routine, if this was part of something scheduled, they'd be back. So I waited. Not inside. Outside. Parked just far enough down the driveway to see the access road without being obvious. Engine off, windows down, letting the morning stay quiet around me. An hour passed, then another. Right when I was about to assume they weren't coming today, I saw it. A white SUV turning slowly onto the access road. HOA logo on the side, moving at that casual pace people use when they think they're doing something routine, something normal. It slowed as it approached the back edge of my property, then stopped. Two people inside. Driver stayed put. Passenger got out and walked straight toward the brush where that line disappeared. No hesitation, no checking, like they'd done it before. I watched as he reached down, pulled something up from the ground, and connected it to a portable unit sitting in the back of the SUV. Generator? No. Too quiet. Battery system. Charging. From my power. I stepped out of the truck slowly, didn't slam the door, didn't call out, just walked. Because moments like that, you don't rush, you control them. He didn't notice me at first, too focused on what he was doing, making sure the connection was secure, glancing back at the vehicle like everything was routine. Then I got close enough. "Morning," I said. He froze, just for a second, then turned around. His expression shifted quickly from concentration to something else, something between surprise and annoyance. "Can I help you?" he asked. I looked down at the cable in his hand, then back at him. "Yeah," I said. "You can start by explaining why you're connected to my power." He straightened slightly. "This is HOA property," he said. I almost smiled. "Almost." "No," I replied. "It's not." He gestured vaguely around us. "This entire area falls under HOA maintenance," he said. "That line," I said, pointing to the cable, "is running into my meter." He hesitated. "Just a fraction, but enough." "We have authorization," he said. "From who?" I asked. He didn't answer that. Instead, he glanced back toward the SUV. Bad move, because that told me everything I needed to know. "Disconnect it," I said. His expression hardened. "We're conducting routine operations," he said. "Not on my property," I replied. Now the driver stepped out, more confident, more sure of himself. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked. I looked at him, then at the setup, then back at him. "The issue," I said calmly, "is that you're drawing power from a private residence without permission." He shook his head slightly. "That's not accurate," he said. "It is," I replied. He stepped closer. "We've been doing this for months," he said. That wasn't the defense he thought it was. "That just makes it worse," I said. There was a pause. Tension settling in, because now they realized this wasn't going to be brushed off. "We'll take it up with the board," he said. I nodded once. "You should," I replied. Then I reached down and unplugged the line myself. Clean, simple, final. Hey, he started. I held up a hand. No, I said. We're done here. His expression changed, not confident anymore, not casual, because now the situation had shifted. They weren't dealing with a homeowner who didn't understand what was happening. They were dealing with someone who did. What's your name? He asked. I looked at him for a second, then answered. Doesn't matter, I said. Because right now, it didn't. Not yet. I coiled the cable slowly and set it on the ground between us. You don't come back here, I said. He opened his mouth like he was about to argue, then stopped. Because something about the situation didn't feel the way he expected it to. Like I said, he muttered, stepping back toward the SUV, we'll handle this through the HOA. I nodded once. You do that, I replied. They drove off a few seconds later, not as slowly as they arrived, not as confident either. And as the sound of the engine faded, I looked back at the meter, still spinning, still drawing. Because unplugging one line didn't undo months of what they'd already done. I checked the time again, then pulled out my phone. Because now, this wasn't just a conversation. This was a case. And the part they didn't realize yet was that they hadn't just taken electricity. They had documented it, repeated it, confirmed it, in front of someone who knew exactly how to handle it. They thought they'd explain it to the HOA, but the next conversation wasn't going to be with them. I didn't report it right away. That's what most people expect, that you catch something like that and immediately call it in, make noise, demand answers, push for action. But situations like this aren't about speed, they're about proof, because once you move, once you escalate, you only get one clean shot at it. And if the other side denies it, minimizes it, or tries to twist it into something else, then everything depends on what you can show, not what you can say. So I didn't call anyone that morning. I documented. First the meter, clear photos showing the abnormal draw, even with the house barely running anything. Then the panel, every angle of the secondary line, where it split, how it was routed, how cleanly it had been installed. This wasn't something someone threw together in a rush. It had been planned, measured, done by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Then I went to the back, the access point, the brush where the cable had been hidden. I didn't remove anything else. I didn't disturb the setup beyond what I had already unplugged. Instead, I set up something small, something they wouldn't notice. A camera. Not obvious, not in the open, just angled enough to cover the exact spot where they had connected the line. Motion triggered, time stamped, clear resolution. The kind of setup that doesn't miss details, because if they had been doing this for months, they'd come back. That afternoon, I made the second move. Not law enforcement, not yet. The HOA office, because I wanted to see how they handled it before it went any further. The office was exactly what you'd expect, clean, organized, the kind of place that looks official enough to make people assume everything behind it is handled properly. The woman at the front desk greeted me like any other resident, polite, neutral, unaware of what I was there for. I need to speak with someone about a property issue, I said. She nodded and made a quick call, then directed me to a small office down the hall. A few minutes later, one of the board members walked in, confident, relaxed, like this was routine. What can I help you with? He asked. I didn't waste time. Your patrol unit is drawing power from my property, I said. He blinked once, just enough to show he wasn't expecting that. I'm sorry, he replied. I repeated it, slower this time, clearer. Your patrol vehicle connected a line to my electrical system this morning. He frowned slightly, shaking his head before I even finished. That doesn't sound accurate, he said. Of course it didn't. I have photos, I replied. That changed his expression slightly, not concern yet, but attention. Let me see, he said. I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the images, slower now, more focused, eyes moving from one detail to another, trying to process what he was looking at without reacting too quickly. That could be anything, he said finally. It's a direct connection to my meter, I replied. He handed the phone back. Our patrol doesn't engage in anything like that, he said. That was the denial, right on schedule. They were there this morning, I said. He crossed his arms. Even if they were, that doesn't mean what you're suggesting is happening, he replied. I nodded once, because now I had what I needed, a position, a clear one. You might want to verify that, I said. We will, he replied. I stood up. Good, I said, then I walked out, No argument, no escalation, because pushing at that moment wouldn't have done anything. They had already chosen their stance. Now it was about letting them commit to it. The next morning, I was back in position before the sun fully came up. Same spot, same view, same quiet, and just like before, right on time, the white SUV came back. Same route, same slow approach, same assumption that nothing had changed. This time, I didn't move right away. I let the camera do its job. The passenger stepped out again, walked straight to the connection point, reached down, and pulled the cable up like it had never been touched, like it belonged there, like it was his. He connected it again, same as before, precise, practiced, completely unaware that every second of it was being recorded. Only then did I step out. He saw me faster this time. Recognition hit immediately. His expression tightened. "You again," he said. "Yeah," I replied. He glanced at the cable, then back at me. "We told you this would be handled," he said. "You did," I replied. "And it is," he added. "No," I said. "It isn't." The driver stepped out again, less confident than the day before, but still trying to hold on to control of the situation. "We have authorization," he said. I shook my head once. "From who?" I asked. He hesitated, just like before, because there wasn't an answer, not a real one. "This is HOA operational infrastructure," he said. "It's my power," I replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said. I looked at him for a second, then said something simple. "No," I replied. "You already did." That was when I pulled out my phone, not to show them anything, just to check the recording. Still running. Clear. Everything captured. The connection, the faces, the timing, the repetition. "You need to disconnect that," I said. He didn't move. Neither of them did. Because now they were stuck between two bad options. Keep going and make it worse. Or stop and admit something wasn't right. "You don't understand how this works," he said. I almost smiled again. Almost. "You're right," I replied. "You don't understand how this works." That threw him off. Because now the tone had changed. Completely. This wasn't a homeowner arguing about a bill anymore. This was something else. Something they hadn't expected. "Last time," I said, stepping closer to the line, "disconnect it." He looked at the driver. The driver looked back at him. And for the first time, they hesitated. Because now the situation didn't feel routine anymore. Didn't feel controlled. Didn't feel safe. He reached down slowly and unplugged it. No argument. No explanation. Just action. "Good," I said. I picked up the cable again, coiled it, and set it aside. Then I looked at both of them. "This stops now," I said. Neither of them responded. Because now they were realizing something they hadn't before. This wasn't going to stay inside the HOA. This wasn't going to be handled quietly in an office with polite denials. This was already past that point. As they got back into the SUV and drove off, faster than before, I checked the recording one more time. Everything was there. Clear. Repeated. Undeniable. I looked back at the house. At the meter. At the line they thought no one would notice. Then I checked the time. Because now, there was no reason to wait. The next step wasn't documentation. It wasn't conversation. It wasn't HOA policy. It was enforcement. And the part they still didn't know was who they had been dealing with this entire time. I didn't call it in anonymously. I didn't pass it off to someone else. And I didn't give the HOA another chance to handle it internally, because by that point, it wasn't internal anymore. It was repeated, documented, and deliberate. So that afternoon, I drove straight to the station. Not in uniform, not making a scene, just walked in like any other day, greeted a couple of guys at the front desk, and headed back to one of the smaller offices where things get handled without unnecessary noise. I sat down, opened my phone, and replayed the footage. Once, then again, then I set it down, because I didn't need to watch it a third time. Everything that mattered was already there. Clear connection, repeated access, faces visible, timeline established, and most importantly, intent. I filed the report properly, not rushed, not emotional, just facts, dates, times, evidence, because when something like this moves forward, it has to be clean from the start. No gaps, no questions, no room for it to be dismissed as a misunderstanding. Within an hour, it was already moving, not aggressively, but seriously. Because utility theft isn't small, especially when it's organized, repeated, and tied to an entity that should know better. By early evening, the first visit was scheduled. Not to my house, to theirs, the HOA office. I didn't go with the initial team. I didn't need to. Sometimes it's better to let things unfold without you standing there, because people talk differently when they think they're explaining themselves to neutral ground. But I heard how it went. At first, denial, same as before. That's not something we do. There must be a misunderstanding. Our patrol operates within guidelines. Then the footage was shown, and everything changed. Because denial only works until proof shows up. After that, it turns into explanation. An explanation, in situations like this, usually turns into damage control. By the next morning, I got the call. They wanted to meet. In person. At my property. That told me everything had shifted. I agreed. Midday. Same spot. Same driveway. But this time, it wasn't just the patrol. It was the board. 3 members, plus someone who looked like legal. And behind them, a patrol unit sitting quietly, not moving, not approaching, just there, waiting. I stepped out of the house and walked toward them slowly. No rush, no tension, just calm. Because once things reach this point, the outcome is already decided. We need to resolve this situation, one of the board members said as soon as I got close. I looked at him. You mean the one where you've been pulling power from my property for months? I asked. He winced slightly, because saying it out loud made it real. We weren't aware of the full details, he said carefully. I nodded once. Your patrol was, I replied. No answer, because that part couldn't be avoided. This shouldn't have happened, another member added quickly. No, I said, it shouldn't have. The legal rep stepped forward slightly. We'd like to come to an agreement before this escalates further, he said. I looked at him for a moment, then asked something simple. Before what escalates? I said. He paused, because now he had to say it. Before charges are finalized, he replied. There it was, out in the open. I nodded once. Those are already in motion, I said. That shifted everything again, because now they weren't preventing escalation. They were behind it. We can compensate you, the first board member said quickly. Cover all utility costs, plus additional damages. I shook my head once. This isn't just about the bill, I replied. Then what is it about? He asked. I looked at all of them, then said it clearly. Accountability. Silence. Because that's the part people try to avoid. Money fixes problems. Accountability fixes behavior. We're prepared to take responsibility, the legal rep said. Good, I replied. Then I let a second pass. Just enough, and added the part they didn't see coming. You should have done that before you ran the same setup twice, after being told to stop. That landed. Hard. Because now it wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And patterns don't get ignored. The patrol officers standing near the SUV didn't say anything, didn't move, but they were listening, and now, so was everyone else. One of the board members exhaled slowly. What do you want? He asked. There it was again. The question that only comes up when control is gone. I answered simply. Full reimbursement of all estimated usage, I said. Written acknowledgement of unauthorized access, and immediate removal of any infrastructure connected to my property. They nodded quickly, too quickly, because those were the easy parts. And, I added, you handle whatever comes next. Properly. The legal rep gave a small nod. He understood what that meant, because some parts of this weren't negotiable anymore. The meeting didn't last much longer after that. They agreed, on everything. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. As they turned to leave, the confidence they walked in with was gone, replaced with something quieter, more careful, more aware. The patrol unit stayed behind for a moment longer, then followed. No one touched the cable. No one stepped near the connection point. That part was over. Within a week, everything was finalized. The payments came through. The documentation was signed, and the HOA issued a statement to residents about unauthorized operational practices being corrected. Careful wording, vague, but enough. The patrol setup disappeared completely. No more early morning stops, no more cables in the brush, no more routine operations. As for the individuals involved, they didn't stay in those roles. Some reassigned, some gone entirely. Quiet changes, but noticeable. Because actions like that don't just disappear without consequences. And me? I went back to normal, same house, same driveway, same quiet mornings, The meter running exactly the way it should. No extra lines, no hidden connections. Just what belonged there. Because the difference between thinking no one is watching and actually not being watched is what happens when someone finally pays attention. And in this case, they picked the wrong house. Because the part they never considered was who they were taking from. And by the time they figured it out, it was already too late. How did you like the story? Please like, share, and subscribe my YouTube channel for more interesting HOA stories.